Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here to talk about my favorite picture books, graphic novels, and I think one comic that I read in 2022. As you guys will have seen, I am splitting up my end of year favorites into different categories and genres because I read so many books last year. Maybe I'll do like a separate playlist of just my favorites and I'll link that below. And today we're talking about picture books and graphic novels, and I think there is just one comic on this list, and these are not going to be in any particular order, just in the order that I have stacked here, so I'm not ranking these, but I have a lot of things I'm excited to talk about. Most of these I do own and have with me, but there's a couple that I don't. So one that I don't is issue number 1 of Earthdivers by Stephen Graham Jones. I don't remember who the artist is, but I will put that in the captions. This is a really fascinating start to a series where it's kind of like post-apocalyptic, and this group of Native American characters have they end up with this like time traveling technology, and they decide that the way to prevent this like climate and earth apocalypse, especially in the US, I don't know how much of it is in other countries as well, but the best way to do that is to make sure that the US as we know it never happens. And so they want to go back in time and kill Christopher Columbus. And so we are following our main character who does that, or who is trying to do that. And in this first issue, we just have him go back in time and kind of start positioning himself in a way that he will be able to get close to and kill Christopher Columbus. And we're already seeing some really interesting discussions of ethics. So like how much violence and murder of other people is justified in order to kill this one man, which will save a lot of other people. And I think that's really interesting. I'm sure we're going to continue exploring that. And I'm already very intrigued by this concept and by this series. So I'm excited to pick up the bind up when I think that comes out in September. Then I also have, for a totally different tone, Garlic and the Witch by Brie Paulson. This is a sequel to Garlic and the Vampire, which I absolutely loved when I read it. I have a whole, like a really short reasons to read video on that one, which I'll link. But this is the second one, and it's absolutely lovely. This one is a lot about like change and how it's okay to be afraid of change, but then also being brave as well. I really love the friendships here. I would love to read like a whole bunch more of these, so I feel like this one ends at a good point, but I would love for Brie Paulson to continue writing these. The art is absolutely adorable. Let me see. Like, we're following our main character who is Garlic, and it's just so cozy and heartwarming, but I don't feel like it's overly sweet and sugary. These just make me so happy, and even though I do think I prefer the first one, I still really love this one, and I give it 5 stars. It's one of my favorites. Then I have a graphic novel nonfiction that is How to Be Ace, a memoir of growing up asexual by Rebecca Burgess, and this is exactly what it says in the title. It's a memoir in graphic novel format. I really liked the art style. I think I described it as like friendly in the wrap up where I talked about it, but it describes like Rebecca Burgess's experience of realizing that she is ace and kind of like navigating that, and like friendships and other relationships. And I think this is really great as like a nonfiction, like talking about asexuality, since that's still not something that that is very well known by a lot of people. And I also feel like the memoir aspects were really engaging as well. So I just thought this was wonderful. Then I have Crabapple Trouble by Katie Van Dorn. This reminds me a tiny bit of like the Garlic and the Vampire series, just because of like the anthropomorphic like fruit and vegetable characters, and a little bit of the art style, but also just like how cozy and wonderful it is. This is another one where it's like I would love there to be more in the series. I don't know if that's going to happen, but this graphic novel is specifically a lot about people contributing in different ways. It's a very like introvert friendly book, and I really loved it. My friend Giselle is the one who I first saw talk about this, so thank you to them. I will link their channel as well, but yeah, I thought that was wonderful. Then, not a surprise, but I have Artemis Fowl, the Eternity Code graphic novel, adapted by Michael Morecci, illustrated by Stephen Gilpin. The original book series is by Owen Colfer, which is one of my favorite series. And I've been really loving these graphic novels. I am so happy to get to like, it's like the perfect combination of like a comfort reread and also new content for something I love, which is like just very exciting. I really like this art style personally, like especially in comparison to the original graphic novels, which were by a different artist and adapter, and I hated them. They were pretty horrible. It's not just me, like they're pretty much widely acknowledged to be awful, so these are so much better. if you saw the wrap-up where I talked about this one, I did have a couple of issues with like some story things they changed, and I don't feel like we got as much like characterization focus, and even though it is a graphic novel, and I know that can be a little trickier, from what I understand, in the previous ones, we still had a lot of great character work. So this wasn't my favorite of this adaptation, like of the ones that have come out so far, but it was still one of my favorite graphic novels I read. Then I have The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. This is a really, really beautiful story that deals a lot with like folklore and fairy tales and family. This was also a present from my lovely friend Olivia-Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, so thank you to her. But obviously I love this because it's in this favorites video, and it's about our main character, who is a Vietnamese boy who is trying to figure out how to tell his mother that he's gay, and he's really struggling. Like, he can't even find a word in Vietnamese that means gay, and so there's all these things that make it like very difficult for him to try to come out to his family. And what he ends up doing is telling stories to her, because that's something that they have always done with each other, is like read folklore and like fairy tales to each other, which would help her practice her English and him practice his Vietnamese. And so he uses stories to try and explain what he's saying. And I just thought that this was gorgeous. Like, I love the story, how like heart-filling it is. I love the family relationships. I love the way this looks at stories and how those change depending on who tells them. And the fairy tale aspects themselves, I just thought were really well done too. So I really love this. I can see why it's one that a lot of people have said good things about. I have They Call This Enemy by George Takei, also by Eisinger, Scott, and Becker. And this is another graphic novel memoir, and it's about George Takei's childhood. Like, a big chunk of his childhood was growing up in the internment camps in the United States during World War II, when Japanese Americans were like forcibly deported there. And I thought this was fantastic. I feel like this is a really great one. Like, if you're hesitant about either nonfiction or graphic novels, I feel like this would be a great one to pick up because it is very easy to follow, and the storytelling is so good. The art detail, I think, is really clear. Like, the characterization is wonderful. I know this is nonfiction, so it's a little funny to talk about characterization, but I really feel like we got to know the people that George Takei is talking about so well. Like, I loved his parents, and I think this is just a really important story. And it also talks about how his experiences really influenced him as an adult and his activism, and I really, really love this. Like, this is one that people have really been hyping for like several years now, and I think all of it is deserved. Also, a very hyped one that I think deserves all of it is New Kid by Jerry Craft. This is, oh yeah, it won the Newbery and the Coretta Scott King Award as well, so it's very, very beloved, and I finally got to it and I loved it. This is about our main character Jordan, who ends up transferring to a very wealthy, prestigious school, and it is primarily white. He's one of the only kids there who are non-white, and he's just dealing with a lot of like ignorance and microaggressions and people just like making weird assumptions, like the fact that they just assume he's going to be best friends with like the other black kid even though they have absolutely nothing in common. So it's a lot about that, and also like friendships and navigating those. Jordan also loves to draw, and so I really loved having those elements throughout the book as well. I thought the humor and the dialogue was fantastic. I'm always really impressed when the writing in graphic novels makes like a specific impression on me, you know? I just think this is a great example of like how kids' stories can tackle big issues in really thoughtful ways that are also still like appropriate for the age group. I just thought this was really fantastic. Then I think this is the last graphic novel I have, and that is The Tea Dragon Tapestry by Kay O'Neill. This is the third in that series, and this was a present from my friend Katie at A Sea of Tomes, and this is like another very, very well-known graphic novel series, so I won't talk about it too much, but the art is gorgeous, the color palette is gorgeous, the story is really cozy and lovely. This one is a lot about like grief and mourning and kind of healing. Like, it's a very quiet story, and there are some more serious elements, but overall it is a very like uplifting story and take on it. I've said before, the only thing I don't love about this series is that I am still weirded out by like the interspecies romances because there's a couple of them that like make total sense to me, and then there's a couple where it's like I really like the characters involved, but I find it weird that like one basically looks like an animal and the other one looks like one of the like human type creatures. Do you know what I mean? Like, normally, like if you have like a human and an elf, for example, that to me doesn't feel as weird as like a human and like a minotaur, you know? You can tell I'm not a monster romance person. But anyway, that is just like a very, very minor part of the series, so I still gave this 5 stars, but I just wanted to mention that that part is not my favorite. Okay, and then moving through my picture books really quick, there's some really wonderful ones that I read last year, and the only one that I think I don't have with me is Gatto by Ruth Sanderson. I don't remember who the illustrator is, but the illustrations are gorgeous, so I will put that in captions, and I will also link the wrap-up where I show this book because it really is worth looking at the pictures. But this is a fairy tale that has some things in common with Cinderella, but it's a really interesting take on one. I also think it's hilarious that like the kind of main perspective character is this like nobleman who helps the king, and he's a cat, and that's like literally never explained why he's a cat and almost everyone else is human. I think that's really funny. I also loved there was no like, I don't know, you never know in fairy tales. Like I really like that there was no like human animal like suggestion of romance or anything, because like you don't always know with fairy tales, you know, that might happen, but that's not what happened here. And I actually really loved the ending and how it subverts a lot of expectations about fairy tales. So if you're looking for anything like this, I thought this was great. Then I have The 1619 Project, Born on the Water by Nicole Hannah-Jones and Renee Watson, illustrated by Nicholas Smith. This is just like a stunning picture book that I think has gotten a lot of well-deserved praise. It's about a young girl who is in class and they're doing like a project on their family tree or family history, and she's a young Black girl whose family's roots are in slavery. And so she doesn't know a lot of these things, and she's really upset and kind of ashamed that she doesn't know these things. And so she goes home and she asks, I think it's her grandmother, like what to do, like about what their family history is like. And so she tells her, like, here's where our people came from. And it's just like, I'm struggling to describe this, but this is one of my favorite picture books I've ever read. I think it is so beautiful and powerful and important. And I just think like, it defies description, obviously. Ashley at Bookish Realm is one where I first heard about this, and I'm so grateful because I think this is just incredible. And I feel like this is such a good example, like a lot of these picture books are such a good example of how like there can be amazing storytelling in picture books. And I think sometimes people don't always think of that. I know I didn't before I started reading more of them as an adult. So yeah, just love this one. I also have Crowned with Glory by Dorina Williamson, illustrated by Shalene Rodney. And this is, and again, like gorgeous illustrations. That's kind of a theme. And it's just a celebration of Black girls' hair. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. It's so beautiful and such an important message, and I loved it. Then I have This Book Is Not For You by Shannon Hale, illustrated by Tracy Subasak. And this is just one where like I love the message of this. And this is about like this little like bookmobile and kids who go there who want to get a book, but the person running it is like, well, you're a boy, you can't read a book about a girl. And then it gets like progressively more outlandish to show like how ridiculous it is. Like they have like robots and cats, and it's such a fun exploration of a concept, but I think it really brings the concept across in a great way. I love Shannon Hale. I love the way that she really is like using her platform to talk about things like diversity and representation in stories, and I think this is a great example of that. It's a ton of fun. Then I have Love in the Library by Maggie Tokuda Hall, illustrated by Yas Imamura, and this is based on the true story of the author's, I think, grandparents who met during the internment of Japanese Americans, and about how they kind of bonded in the library and how they found like strength in that and in each other. And like, oh, I love these illustrations. And I also think this book does a really fantastic job of emphasizing that even though like this is the story that she's telling, it never comes across as like, you know, oh, so it was all worth it then. Do you know what I mean? Like she talks about that in the author's note in a way that I really appreciated. So I loved this one. I have Queen of Tejano Music, Selena by Sylvia Lopez, illustrated by Paula Escobar. I know I keep repeating myself, but basically all of these have incredibly beautiful illustrations, which is one of the things I love about them. But this is a kind of like picture book biography about the singer Selena, who I did not know very much about. I knew only a little about her. And I'm so glad that I got to learn more about her. She seems like a really wonderful person, and I loved seeing her impact on the people around her and on music and on like you know, the way she incorporated her culture and everything. I thought this was really, really beautiful, and I learned a lot from it. Then I have Berry Song by Michaela Goad, who also is the one who illustrated it, and I just, like, absolutely gorgeous. We Are Water Protectors is also illustrated by Michaela Goad, and that is another one of my all-time favorite picture books. And I think this book like officially solidifies Michaela Goad as one of my all-time favorite picture book creators. Yeah, this is beautiful. So this is about a young girl and her grandmother takes her berry picking, and it talks about like connection to the land and like nature, and it's so beautiful. Like it sounds like a very like simple story, but it feels very meaningful, and I think that Michaela Goad did such a wonderful job with this one. It's a very like soothing and beautiful story. I also think it's great that she does include a note about like, you know, don't go collecting unless you have somebody who knows what they're doing, because of like safety reasons. You don't just want to eat anything you find in the wild. So I thought that was a good touch as well, especially since this is intended for kids. But yeah, this is stunning. And then the last two are not exactly picture books, but I'm including them here because I didn't really know where to put them. And I have A World Full of Nature Stories, 50 Folk Tales and Legends by Angela McAllister, illustrated by Hannah Bess Ross. This was actually also a gift from my friend Katie. And this is a bunch of fairy tales and folk tales from all over the world that deal with the natural world. So they're divided into categories based on that, and I loved these. I loved the variety of stories and cultures, and I just think this is such a gorgeous book. Like, if you are at all interested in this kind of like picture book slash like fairy tale sort of compendium, this is a really beautiful one, as is the last book I'm talking about, and that is The Lost Fairy Tales, Fearless Girls Around the World, retold by Isabel Otter, illustrated by Anna Sender. So this is a collection that is specifically made up of stories from, again, various cultures that are really featuring like strong young girls as main characters. And all of these are stories that were actually like part of these cultures, and like they actually do have this long history and tradition, but they've been kind of like forgotten or overlooked over the years, and this like is kind of collecting them and giving them like more chance for people to know them. And I thought that was wonderful. I also really love the art, of course, and yeah, like I love that. And I also really like that at the back of the book there's a section where there's like a little question about each of the stories that would be great for discussion, and about some of like the ideas and like themes and everything. So yeah, this is another really beautiful one, and this was a present from my friend Huck at Badger Reads. So like a lot of these actually were gifted, so you guys did a great job picking my friends did a great job picking like picture books and graphic novels for me. So anyway, those are my favorite picture books and graphic novels that I read in 2022. Comment down below, let me know if you're interested in any of these, or if you've read any of these. Let me know a couple of your favorites in these categories. And also let me know, like, this actually just made me think, like, I think at one point I should do some kind of video on like picture books to start with if you don't know where to start, kind of thing. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!